LA Kings GM Rob Blake held his midseason press conference. What did we think of what he had to say? That and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We would love for you to leave us a positive comment on Apple Podcasts if you're a fan of the show. And we're on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, 20 plus years at the Fox Sports Radio Network. I'm also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 17 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you're purchasing a Jase case. It provides you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50 plus infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com and use the code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. That's jasemedical.com. Well, the LA Kings are about to get the second half of the season underway tonight, and earlier on Thursday, Kings general manager held an annual State of the Team address at the midway point of the 2023-24 season, which has been eventful so far. So let's get into what the former Kings legend and a Hall of Fame defenseman had to say. He opened up the press conference by giving a quick injury report. He said that Kings winger Victor Arvidsson has resumed skating. Hopefully within the next 2 to 3 weeks, he will join practice, and mentioned that he'll probably be back at some point after the All-Star break. He also said that Blake Lizotte has a lower body injury and is week to week, not just a week, but multiple weeks, and he also would be looking to come back after the All-Star break. The LA Kings then released a statement that Blake Lizotte has officially been placed on injured reserve. And if you're not familiar with that, a player on injured reserve is ineligible to compete in NHL games for a period of no less than 7 days. The injured player may attend club meetings, meals, travel, and participate in practice sessions. That is literally from the NHL rule book as far as players placed on injured reserve. Now, going into the press conference, I mentioned it on Wednesday's show that I personally was not going to be able to attend the press conference because of my work schedule, but I had 7 questions that I hoped would be asked of GM Rob Blake, and all 7 were basically covered. Not the specific way maybe I would have phrased it, but I think generally they were all asked, which I was happy to see. So good job by all of the media there assembled and friends of the show that were participating, like Russell Morgan and Austin Stanovich, and of course the Kings insider Zach Dooley. But the big question I had, the number one question I had of Rob Blake was, has he considered a coaching change? And if not, why not? Well, that wasn't asked in particular that way, but he was asked if he had considered a coaching change, and he had a pretty emphatic response. What did Rob Blake have to say? Not at all. He, Todd McClellan, has gotten the buy-in of the players, going to rely on the players and the leadership to get the team out of where they are right now. No one came home from that trip happy. That was the quote from Kings general manager Rob Blake. So he didn't specifically say no, but he pretty emphatically said not at all. Now, do I believe that Rob Blake has not thought about a coaching change? I would say not at all. He wouldn't be doing his job if he didn't consider all options. Now, Rob Blake, I think, is a pretty straight shooter. I've covered sports for over 30 years as a professional journalist, if you want to call me that. I don't know that I would use that word, but somebody who has worked in the sports broadcasting business, has attended press conferences, has asked questions, and obviously observed a ton of press conferences from all different sports, all different coaches, players, that kind of thing, general managers. And have I seen coaches, players, and general managers lie right to the face of reporters? Absolutely. And then also, though, you'll get a lot of the answers that don't answer the question. And there's a couple of examples for Rob Blake in this as well. But I think Rob Blake, from what I've observed of him over the past few years, I think he's a pretty straight shooter. He's not going to completely tell you everything if he doesn't feel it's in the best interest to divulge it. But do I believe him when he's alluding to the fact that he believes that Todd McClellan being removed is not the answer? I believe he believes that. I also believe that Todd McClellan has basically hitched his wagon. Rob Blake has hitched his wagon to Todd McClellan. Both of them have 1 year remaining on their contracts after this season. And I think Rob Blake is basically, he's tied himself to the success of Todd McClellan. That's pretty amazing. And I think we'd all love to have a boss who believes in us that much. Maybe he feels like I can't think that he doesn't feel like he has another option. I will just say this. If I were the general manager of the LA Kings, would I hitch my wagon to Todd McClellan? The answer is no, I would not. But he has, and he's putting this on the players. So that's what Rob Blake has had to say. Now, could he change his mind? It's certainly possible. I would be surprised based on his statements. I think the Kings would have to completely crater for him to make a coaching change. As long as they're still in a playoff fight, it appears that Todd McClellan is going to remain the head coach of the LA Kings. So we'll have to wait and see. I would have had a follow-up question. My question would have been, how much longer is he willing to wait if the team continues on this trend? He wasn't asked that, but there was a follow-up, and his answer was, quote, "It's about a group effort. It comes back to the foundation put in place over the last few years," end quote. So again, Rob Blake is putting this on the LA Kings players to get them out of the current situation they're in. And it does not appear that a coaching change is anywhere close to imminent at this point. But again, if the Kings do absolutely crater, he'll be left with no choice. He'll have to do it. But that isn't the case right now. And so looks like Todd McClellan is going to be here for the immediate future. One of the other questions I wanted to have asked and answered was, will the Kings look to make any roster changes to shake things up? Are any trades possibility? Rob Blake was asked what the Kings could do at the trade deadline, and paraphrasing, he said, "It's a little different in the approach going into it. Right now, the speculation with Arvidsson plays into this. You have to be able to put that back into the lineup. We are excited about his progression, and we don't see anything that would stop that from happening. Maybe around that time, around the deadline, maybe a week or two earlier. So that would be one of the benefits. Then we're back to the situation where we were before with a limited roster and cap space. If everyone is healthy, things will be fluid up to that point. We envision RV being a big addition in that aspect. We missed him in our lineup as a goal scorer and a lot of energy." He was also asked about the unrestricted free agents that the Kings have on their roster. Defenseman Matt Roy, Victor Arvidsson, goaltender Cam Talbot. He said, "Best case scenario is we let things play out and go from there. I don't know how much we've had with success negotiating with any UFAs during the season in the past. These players help us to get where we need to be, so we need them." And there was a follow-up where Blake said he prefers not to negotiate in the season for the benefit of not disrupting the players' focus. And that's obviously coming from a former player's standpoint. So he, as a general manager, doesn't usually like to negotiate with unrestricted free agents during the season. And let's be honest, he alluded to it. And basically he said, Victor Arvidsson is going to be our trade deadline pickup. We're not going to do anything else because we can't. And we're not looking to trade Matt Roy because he's helping us to get where we need to go. So I think that was the answers we got on what the Kings could do from a roster standpoint to kind of try and get them going. They're relying on Victor Arvidsson coming back, barring any other injuries or anything like that. The third question I had, what is his assessment of Pierre-Luc Dubois through his first 41 games as a King? And he pretty much had nothing but good things to say. He said that PLD is playing with the puck, that his play with the puck has been good. We can get more out of him on the defensive side, recovering pucks and making the players around him better. So that was not much to say on Pierre-Luc Dubois, but the general gist of it was he thinks he's playing fine. The other question I had, one of the other questions, what are the Kings planning to do this season with Brandt Clarke? He did answer that in part. He said part of the reason for the call-up of Clarke was we had the ability to call up an extra defenseman. Those two, Clarke and Spence, have been talked to on a daily basis as far as the rotation and using them. You want to expose them to everything we had on this trip. It's important to get them into the NHL with different minutes, and that will be the rotation going forward. So It appears that Brant Clark is going to stay up on the Kings roster and that he and Jordan Spence are going to be in and out of the lineup for the foreseeable future, which is an interesting way to handle that. Why isn't Samuel Fagemo in the Kings lineup? Now, I don't know if that was asked. There was a question that was asked, and unfortunately, the reporters don't have microphones, so sometimes you can't hear the specific question. But I believe that was asked, and I believe, well, I know the answer, but I'm almost positive he was asked about Samuel Fagemo. If I got that wrong, that's on me. But he said, quote, "We don't have a timeline on that right now. He's having success where he is, and he's helping us." So it looks like, according to Rob Blake, the Kings have no plans on calling up Samuel Fagemo at this point. And he didn't say why. Maybe that should have been asked. Why not? But it seems like he's not going to get called up anytime soon based on that very short, brief answer. And I still don't get it. Two more questions. What is the biggest concern he has with the team at this point? He said several times, there is a process in place. There is a structure. Defend first, and that will pull you out of it. Talking about getting the team back on track. And then the other question I had was, what has he seen that makes him believe the Kings can once again be the team we saw earlier this year? He said the words defend, structure, and system about 15 times. So that's what he's relying on. That's what he thinks gets the Kings out of where they are and back on track. Defend, structure, and system. He said it over and over again. Real quick, there were a couple of other questions that were asked. One of them was, if the Kings don't advance out of the first round of the playoffs, would this year be a failure? His answer to that was, we want to be better each year. That's our job. And the most interesting question was asked about Jonathan Quick returning to LA on Saturday with the New York Rangers. And the reporter didn't flat out ask him, but he was dancing around, do you have any regrets on making that trade? And Rob Blake did not answer that question. His response was, Jonathan Quick should be honored as the greatest goalie in Kings history. So he did not answer the question, which was basically, do you have any regrets on trading Jonathan Quick? Well, the Kings are playing every game the rest of the way, I think, fighting for playoff spots. That includes a very big matchup tonight against the Nashville Predators. We'll get you more on that in a moment. But what did you think about what Rob Blake had to say? We've got a feedback show coming up tomorrow. If you want to comment on anything he had to say, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I loved everything he had to say. Certainly interesting about not considering a coaching change. That is not etched in stone, but it seems pretty firm at the moment that that's not a consideration. Again, Victor Arvidsson coming back is going to be the Kings' big acquisition late in the year. We thought that would be the case. And then the Brant Clark platoon situation with Jordan Spence going forward is interesting. Doesn't look like Samuel Fagemo is being called up. And again, defend, structure, and system. We're going to talk about the Kings' big matchup against the Nashville Predators coming up tonight. Give you a preview. That's next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Are you one of those people that's prepared? I'm not, but thankfully I have a wife that is. She's got an earthquake kit and is always a step ahead of things. I make fun of her sometimes, but I know that really she's the smart one and I'm the dumb one. And I know she would love a Jase case. What is that, you ask? Well, the Jase case is a personalized emergency medical kit that contains 5 essential antibiotics that treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections. God knows, in the world today, you never know what can happen. Obviously, we learned that with the pandemic, and it can lead to supply shortages for medications. With the Jase case, you can also customize your case and add any additional life-saving medications based on your unique needs. Choose the medications that best fit you and your family. Jase is continually working to expand their medication offerings. You can buy a gift card for family or loved ones so that they can get a Jase case of their own. Go to jasemedical.com, enter the promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for $20 discount on your order. That's promo code LOCKEDON at jasemedical.com. Well, the Kings are finally back home off that season-high 6-game road trip where the team struggled going 1-3-2. Kings are suddenly fighting for postseason positioning, and they host the Nashville Predators team that is holding on to the final wildcard spot in the Western Conference. Kings are 21-12-8, third place in the Pacific, 6th in the Western Conference, and 12th in the NHL with 50 points. Kings are 7-7-5 at home, coming off a 5-1 loss in Dallas on Tuesday. The Nashville Predators are 24-19-1, fourth place in the Central Division, 8th place in the Western Conference and 15th place in the NHL with 49 points, 1 point fewer than the Kings. Predators are 11-8-1 on the road this season. They're coming off a 4-1 loss in Las Vegas against the Golden Knights on Monday. Kings are 14th in the NHL in goals scored per game at 3.27. That is down to, and they're down to third, I should say, on goals allowed per game at 2.56. They were second in the NHL, so a slight dip as far as that goes. Predators are 17th in the NHL in goals scored per game at 3.11. They're 18th in the NHL in goals allowed per game at 3.14. The Kings are 16th in the NHL on the power play at 21.2%. Number one in the NHL on the penalty kill at 87.2%. Nashville is 18th on the power play at 20.5%, 25th on the penalty kill at 77.1%. Individually, the LA Kings are led in points by Captain Anze Kopitar, one of those players Rob Blake says they're leaning on to get him out of their slump and back on track. Kopi has 39 points on the season. Trevor Moore is the Kings' leading goal scorer with 20. For Nashville, they are led in points and goals by Philip Forsberg. He's got 48 points and 22 goals, so they will definitely need to lean on him. Ryan O'Reilly and defenseman Roman Josi, a couple other standouts to watch as well, but Philip Forsberg is the main man for the Nashville Predators. As for the two netminders, the Kings are not going with Cam Talbot, who's allowed 5 goals in back-to-back games, 5 goals, I should say, in both games, that is his last 2 starts. So his numbers have slipped. He has dropped to 8th in the NHL in goals against, 16th in the NHL in save percentage. He was top 5 for most of the year. So David Rittich gets the call tonight for the Kings. 5 appearances so far since being called up, replacing the injured Phoenix Copley as the Kings' number 2 goalie. David Rittich has a 3-0 record, 1.61 goals against average, and a .932 save percentage. Those are outstanding numbers over a very small sample size. For David Rittich tonight, he's a former Nashville Predator, so he'll be taking on some of his old friends. He played 1 year as the backup in Nashville. That was during the 2021-22 season. In his career, David Rittich is 2-0-1 lifetime against Nashville. So the win-loss record is good, but the numbers themselves are not so good. I can only assume that when he did face Nashville in the past, his offense came up big for him. His goals against average lifetime in 3 starts against the Predators is at .388, and his save percentage is .887. Those are not good numbers. So hopefully we can see the David Rittich we've seen as an LA King tonight in net against the Nashville Predators. As far as who Nashville will have as their netminder, it'll be the veteran Juse Saros, former Vezina Trophy finalist. He has struggled so far this season. The record is not great at 17-16-1. He is 34th in the NHL in goals against average at 3.02 and 36th in the NHL in save percentage, which is exactly .900. So those numbers for Juse Saros are not up to his standards, but he is normally a very reliable and solid netminder. So knowing the way the Kings are going right now, we'll probably see vintage Juse Saros in net and not the one that has been inconsistent so far this season. This is the first of 3 meetings between the two teams, and they all will probably be very big meetings going the rest of the way. The Kings will play in Nashville on January 31st and back in LA to face the Predators on February the 22nd. Nashville missed out on the playoffs last year by 2 points. This season, they were expected to be very similar to the team that they were a year ago, a team that could compete for a playoff spot, but not being picked to make any kind of a deep playoff run. And that's pretty much what we've seen out of the Nashville Predators so far this season. Again, holding on to the final wildcard spot in the West so far. As for the projected lineup for the Los Angeles Kings, we saw pretty much the same forward lineup, actually exactly the same forward lineup that we saw in their last game against Dallas. So again, with Blake Lizotte out, it's Trevor Lewis centering the 4th line. Jared Anderson-Dolan is in there again on the right side on the 3rd line, with Grundstrom and Kaliev, the wingers, on the 4th line. And I'm going to say this, and one of the things about the Samuel Fagemo situation is that I'm now starting to dislike Jared Anderson-Dolan, and that is so not fair to him. He has no part in this. He's just doing what he's told. And I've mentioned it before. He is what he is. He's a guy who's going to come in, he'll give you everything he has. I appreciate his work ethic. He skates hard. He's responsible, but he doesn't have anything in his toolbox offensively that shows you he's going to contribute in a big way, like I believe Samuel Foggy-Mo can. So every time I see him in the lineup, I get a taste in my mouth, and that's just I don't feel good about it because again, it's not his fault. This is more of a management coaching situation. So I hope Jared Anderson-Dolan can play well and maybe get a goal here and there to make me feel a little bit better about him being in the lineup because, like I said, this is not his fault. As for the defense, Rob Blake talked about it, the platoon situation on the back end with Jordan Spence and Brant Clark, and it looks like it's Jordan Spence back in, Brant Clark back out, and I guess that's going to be the situation going forward. And we mentioned in net, it is going to be David Rittich getting the start in place of Cam Talbot tonight. So that is the lineup for the LA Kings against the Nashville Predators. A big game tonight for Los Angeles. We'll tell you why. We'll give you the details on why it is a big game for both of these teams coming up here in a moment on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. When you're drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish you could handpick the best stars for your business team? Well, if you're building your talent roster, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Indeed does the hard work for you. Sponsor a job, and they'll match you with quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed fit your description right when you post it. With Indeed, you can start hiring fast. Over 3 million businesses worldwide use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. The LA Kings host the Nashville Predators tonight. It's a 7 p.m. Pacific time start time. Catch every moment of the hometown broadcast of your LA Kings with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search LA Kings. And unfortunately, tonight's game is not going to be broadcast locally on Bally Sports West. So if you don't have ESPN Plus or Hulu, then you're going to have to listen to SiriusXM. Use the SXM app and search LA Kings and listen to Nick Nixon and Daryl Evans on the radio call. All right, heading into tonight's action, where are the Kings in the playoff race? Well, the good news is nothing changed from Wednesday because none of the teams that the Kings are battling for playoff positions with played last night, but that's not the case tonight. Everyone is in action. So the LA Kings have 50 points on the season. That's third place in the Pacific, and right now they hold an automatic playoff spot. The Kings are 5 points back of Vegas for the second spot in the Pacific, and LA does have 3 games in hand on the Golden Knights. In other words, the Golden Knights have played 3 more games than the LA Kings. So if the Kings won all 3 of those games, that would be 6 points, and that would be 1 point in front of Vegas, at least theoretically. So Vegas is hosting the New York Rangers tonight, so a very tough game for them. New York is the top team in the Metropolitan Division, so go Rangers, at least for tonight, not on Saturday. As for the teams that are chasing the Kings are just 1 point up on Edmonton. The Oilers have won 11 in a row, and they are taking on the Seattle Kraken tonight. That is up in Edmonton. Now, if the Oilers win and the Kings lose in regulation or overtime or a shootout, Edmonton will overtake the Kings and move into third place in the Pacific Division. Again, if the Oilers win and the Kings lose in any fashion, then the Oilers will take over third place. They hold the tiebreaker over the Kings. They've actually played 1 fewer game, the Oilers, than the Kings. As for Seattle, they're 3 points back of LA in the standings. And again, they're taking on the Oilers in Edmonton tonight. So I guess the good news there, if you want to look at it that way, is that one of those teams is going to lose and not gain ground on the Kings. Hopefully it's, frankly, Edmonton that loses. Also, Calgary is right there as well. They are 3 points back of the Kings in the standings as well. They'll be hosting the Toronto Maple Leafs. Toronto is struggling right now, so a big game for them. Hopefully they can get a win over the Flames. Calgary, again, just 3 points back of the Kings, so they're in the mix. And for LA, they're just 1 point up on Nashville for a potential wild card spot. So again, if the Oilers win tonight and the Predators beat the Kings in regulation, LA would drop from the 3rd spot in the Pacific down to the last wild card spot in the Western Conference. So the Oilers would have 51 points, the Kings would still have 50, and Nashville would have 51 points. But Edmonton has the tiebreaker over Nashville, so they would have the better point percentage there. But they'd be in 3rd place in the Pacific anyway, so that doesn't matter because Nashville is in the Central. So anyway, what are we trying to say? It's a big game tonight, and most of the games going forward will be big, but in particular tonight, LA Kings head-to-head against Nashville. This is a big game for both teams, so hopefully we can see a LA Kings victory back home. They haven't been great at home on home ice this year. Hopefully, though, we can start a trend and get the team moving in the right direction. All right, for you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up on Friday, we're going to recap the Kings-Predators game. It will also be another Kings fan feedback show. Get those emails in ASAP, as I will be recording the Friday show either very late tonight on Thursday or early in the morning on Friday. So if you usually wait until like the afternoon on Friday to get your emails in, you're going to be out of luck for this week. So get those thoughts on the Rob Blake press conference. Get your thoughts on the first half of the season for the Kings or anything else you want to talk about. The email address, lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE, lockedoneddie@gmail.com. And we always welcome your comments if you're watching on YouTube in the comment section below. We'd love for you to stay interactive with us by following us on X, Twitter, and Instagram. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you, as always, for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you on Friday. And as always, go Kings, go.